Gisbergen is bringing a new sponsor to NASCAR, and NY Racing will run the Daytona 500, but Great Biffle will not be the driver. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got some NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just show those really quickly. We're first going to take a look at some paint schemes that have been revealed over the last couple days. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into it. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Sam Mayer's 2024 Tire Pro scheme that we'll see in 2 races in 2024. Sam Mayer will bring Tire Pros back. Obviously, there's a lot of talk that Tire Pros could move over to work with Josh Berry this season. The scheme looks solid, and I'm looking forward to seeing it on the racetrack in 2024. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Tai Aes's 2024 Road Ranger scheme that we'll see at Daytona. Road Ranger back to sponsor Tai Aes. This is a solid paint scheme, in my opinion. Different than last year's. I wonder if they're going to run the traditional Road Ranger scheme, but I think this looks pretty good, in my opinion. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Carson Noar's 2024 Ziegler and Gainbridge scheme. This is a really solid combination of paint schemes. You get both sponsors in a really good equation, and I think this looks really, really great, and I'm looking forward to see on the racetrack in 2024. And the final paint scheme we're taking a look at is Lena Honeyman Jr.'s 2024 Ohio Logistics scheme that we'll see this weekend at Daytona. This looks good in my opinion. Not great, but not amazing, but it does look solid, and hopefully we'll see him have a good run with the scheme. I think it looks solid, and I'm looking forward to see on the racetrack in the 2024 season. And now we're going to hedge on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the top 10 spenders. Now, it was reported by Adam Stern, that these were the top 10 spenders in regards to sponsorship and advertisement for 2023. According to Adam Stern, in first, you had Toyota. In second, you have Geico. In third, Pfizer. Fourth, Progressive. Fifth, Ram. Sixth, Coke Zero. Seventh, you had Wendy's. Eighth, you had Busch Beer. Ninth, you had eBay. And 10th was Ford. Very interesting to see. Not a shock to see Toyota at the top, considering Toyota is one of the big premier sponsors in NASCAR. You've also got Geico, another big premier. Coke Zero, of course, had a lot of those ads if you need you to try you first. In general, there was a lot of spending. Wendy's is definitely a little bit of a shock, but I know they did a lot of work. In fact, there's going to be a lot of work at Wendy's for the Daytona 500 this year. But still, it's very interesting to see that that was the top 10 spenders for this year, or for last year, I should say. I think that's some pretty interesting when you take a look at it, in my opinion. And now we're going to hedge on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Busch. Now, Kyle Busch was interviewed by Bob Pockrass during media days that he's very hopeful to win the Daytona 500. Kyle Busch is among many drivers who are looking to win their first Daytona 500, among drivers like Brad Keselowski and even drivers like Martin Truex Jr. This is Kyle Busch's 19th try at the Daytona 500. Of course, he did not race in 2015 due to the injury. Matt Crafton substituted for him. But Kyle Busch has come so close to winning Daytona 500. I believe he holds the record currently for most laps led in the Daytona 500 with not winning the Daytona 500 up to this point. But I'll tell you what, I think Kyle Busch has a really strong chance and a great possibility of winning the Daytona 500 this year in 2024. RCR's got a really strong super speedway program, and I think RCR has a really strong opportunity here to get the Daytona 500 this year. We'll see what Kyle Busch can do with Rich Schultz Racing, but I think he does have a really solid and good chance to win the Daytona 500 in 2024. And now we're going to hedge on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Icebreaker. Now, over the weekend at Florence Speedway, you had the major Icebreaker at Florence. And Carson Noar, who currently drives for Junior Motorsports' late model program, was able to pick up the victory. Meanwhile, Dale Jr. actually competed in this event. I think he started around 13th or 14th position, was able to drive his way all the way up to 4th, and actually was in contention and in position to potentially win the Icebreaker. But going back to the guy who won the race, Carson Noar. Massive congratulations to him. There is a lot of hype around Carson Noar. He's extremely talented. I wouldn't be shocked or surprised if we do see Carson Noar make his NASCAR Xfinity Series debut at some point this year. It's kind of similar to Josh Berry. He's winning a lot of these late model races, and I think at some point Dale Jr. is going to give an opportunity to Carson Noar. He's already made some Truck Series starts, so I wouldn't be shocked or surprised if Carson Noar, in fact, is able to make some starts in the NASCAR Xfinity Series this year. But nonetheless, massive and huge congratulations to him on winning at the Icebreaker at Florence Speedway. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Hy-Vee. Now, it was reported by Adam Stewart on Friday that according to him, Hy-Vee's in discussions to sponsor the Iowa Cup race in some form. Obviously, NASCAR will be going to Iowa for the Cup Series for the first time, and we'll be back in NASCAR for the first time since 2019. And we already know that Hy-Vee's had a massive and huge commitment working with IndyCar over the course of the last couple years and seasons, really since about 2021 and 22. They've really fixed Iowa Speedway in a big way. And I think that Hy-Vee, especially with the Cup Series race at Iowa selling out and people begging for Iowa to add more seats, I think that they're going to do something, maybe adding more seats perhaps, maybe becoming a major premier sponsor of the event. I think the sponsor name has already been revealed, if I'm not mistaken, so they probably couldn't change the name, even though they probably could if they wanted to. But still, I think it is very amazing to see the Hy-Vee wants to potentially be committed with Iowa Speedway. They've got a massive commitment with IndyCar currently at the moment right now, and I think that commitment may transition over to working with NASCAR. So I hope it does end up happening because Hy-Vee is one of the big brands and companies that works in NASCAR at this moment. I think it'd be pretty awesome, and hopefully we do get to see them work with them in 2024. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Lane Riggs. Now, Lane Riggs was speaking Dirty Media Days with Bob Pockrass and spoke about the opportunity with Front Row Motorsports. Said he's really excited about it. He can't thank Bob Jenkins and Jerry Freese for the opportunity and is excited to see him get to work there. I am really high on Lane Riggs going into the season. He's going to be driving a 38 truck for Front Row Motorsports this upcoming year. There's a lot of hype around him. He ran a couple Select Truck Series races last year with, of course, Spire Motorsports, and also had an opportunity with Tricon Garage last year, and also did make a couple select starts with Colleague Racing. And like I said, he drove for Spire last year in a few races and was really impressive. He's had a couple top 5 finishes. He almost won and led a ton of laps at Phoenix for Homer Freeze in 2022. And in general, I think that Lane Riggs, very similar to his father Scott, is going to be someone to watch for many years down the road. I think Lane Riggs is going to be a championship contender in the Truck Series this year. I think he is going to win at least, if I had to guess, around probably 5, maybe not 5, but probably around 2 to 3 races this year. And I am really high on him. I think he'll get a couple wins, and I think he could make the championship for this year. I think he's a very talented driver who can get the best out of equipment. So I'm really excited to see what Lane Riggs can do in 2024. It's an amazing opportunity for him, and I do believe that he'll be able to take the best out of it this year in 2024 with Front Row Motorsports. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Days of Thunder. Now, earlier this evening, it was reported by Adam Stewart that according to him, NASCAR is open to participating in a Days of Thunder sequel movie if the opportunity is arisen, according to Steve O'Donnell, who is one of the higher-ups of NASCAR. This is absolutely huge. Days of Thunder, while not the biggest movie in theaters, is a massive cult film that many people watch. So I will say Days of Thunder is an absolutely amazing movie. I've seen it many times. And many people like myself have been clamoring and pushing for there to be a sequel of Days of Thunder. Obviously, recently, a few years ago, you had Top Gun Maverick that was released, which was a sequel to Top Gun, and I would consider Top Gun Maverick to be one of the best movies I have ever seen. And Tom Cruise wants to be the director of this, apparently, which would absolutely be huge. Because I believe that this movie could, if Days of Thunder 2 sequel, could be bigger than Days of Thunder. And I think if it does well enough in theaters, I think it could transcend and grow NASCAR in a big way. There's got to be some other thing just in NASCAR full speed that comes into play. And I do believe that Days of Thunder could be that really key thing that really helps and grows the sport. So nonetheless, I'm really excited about this. And again, I think it's amazing to see that there are actual legitimate talks about a Days of Thunder sequel. I hope it ends up happening, so I think it'd be really huge and really awesome for the sport if it does end up happening, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about DJ Khaled. As it was announced earlier today that DJ Khaled will be the honorary starter for the Daytona 500. He joins a star-studded lineup of people that are going to be at the Daytona 500. Pitbull is going to perform a pre-race concert this year. You're also going to have, of course, it was announced earlier today that the Miss America is going to be driving a pace car. I can remember who is going to be playing the national anthem this year. But DJ Khaled, one of the biggest names in the industry, known as the guy as We the Best Music, known for being a memester, and everybody knows DJ Khaled. And I really hope that they do some big things with DJ Khaled because his TikTok is incredible. It's fun to watch. And I would really love to see DJ Khaled get a huge part. Because I think especially with Wendy's coming into play, and because it was announced there's going to be some sort of promotion with the Wendy's Biggie Bag, I believe, this year. And DJ Khaled is going to be part of that. I think that you're going to see a lot of cringy stuff from them, quintessentially talking about Fox, but I think DJ Khaled being involved in the sport is amazing and phenomenal. So I'm really happy about this and glad to see that DJ Khaled will be the honorary starter for this year's Daytona 500. And now we're going ahead to move on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Jordan Anderson. As it was revealed by Larry McReynolds on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio that Jordan Anderson is going to drive the 32 for his own organization, Jordan Anderson Racing, at Daytona International Speedway. Jordan also confirmed on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio that he is attempting to run all 4 Super Speedway races in the NASCAR Xfinity Series this season. Jordan Anderson, of course, who is the son-in-law of Larry McReynolds. Another key thing, Larry McReynolds is going to be the crew chief for Jordan Anderson in this race. And if Larry McReynolds, of course, has been the crew chief in the last couple starts for Jordan Anderson. Jordan Anderson, in my opinion, has been building up a really strong program in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. He's got a really solid lineup of Jeb Burton and Parker Retzlaff. They're bringing in some huge sponsors. And last season, Jeb Burton was able to get Jordan Anderson Racing's first win in the NASCAR Xfinity Series at Talladega. And Jordan Anderson, like I've talked about before, has been very good at super speedways in the past. And I think that Jordan has a great chance and opportunity. And also seeing Larry McReynolds come back out of retirement again to work with Jordan Anderson, his son-in-law, I think is phenomenal and really, really incredible. It's admirable. It's amazing. And like I said, I'm very, very happy to see that we are going to see Jordan Anderson Racing back in the spotlight and back racing this year. Hopefully, we see Jordan do very, very good in the races he runs this year in 2024, because I believe that Anderson could be an underdog for the wins at all the Super Speedway races in 2024. And now we're going ahead to move on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Joey Logano and Kyle Busch. Now, over the weekend, Joey Logano was on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio on his show Behind the Wheel, which always airs on Tuesdays. And Joey Logano shockingly revealed that he actually might be friends with Kyle Busch. Of course, Joey and Kyle fly together into each of these racetracks, and it seemed like they make up with each other, and basically they seem to be getting along a little bit more, at least from Joey Logano's standpoint. This is very interesting because Kyle Busch and Joey Logano historically have not liked each other over the years. They've had a rivalry for many, many years, going back to 2017 when Kyle Busch and Joey Logano got into a fight with Kyle throwing more punches than Joey Logano. And then, of course, there's been other incidents where Kyle Busch and Joey Logano have gotten into it. But it's really cool to see, even though Kyle Busch in the past and even last year called Joey Logano two-face after what happened at the Clash last year, it is interesting to see that they at least might be getting along a lot more. And I think it's good too because he even said you're going to sit in a tunnel for 6 hours and at the end, you're eventually going to get along and you're going to get your stuff together and you're going to figure things out. Again, I have a lot more respect for Joey Logano nowadays, and I think even Kyle Busch fans, even some of the biggest Kyle Busch fans, might be more fans of Joey Logano now, even though they're probably not going to be. They might become more fans of Joey Logano because of what he said. And maybe we see them become friends and work together. I think that's a little bit of a stretch to say the least, but still, it is good to see that they're both getting at least a little more. And it's interesting to see that both Kyle Busch and Joey Logano might be friends on and off the racetrack. Very interesting thing. We'll see if that affects their relationship going into the future. And now we're going ahead and on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Mason Massie. As it was announced earlier today that Mason Massie will be joining Young's Motorsports in 2024, driving a 02 truck. Mason Massie last year drove for DGM Racing in a couple organizations throughout the year, and also I believe made some select truck series starts with the Rayum brothers. Young's Motorsports right now is only planning to run one full-time truck this year. The reason being is because they're going to be focusing a lot of their eggs into the NASCAR Xfinity Series. But Mason Massie, in my opinion, is a solid driver. He's not someone that's going to set the world on fire this year in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series because, like I said, I think Young's Motorsports is putting a lot of their eggs in the basket of the NASCAR Xfinity Series with Lena Honeyman Jr. But I think that Mason Massie getting all the focus might really help them. I think one of the other big issues that this team has had is sometimes they've had too many trucks on the racetrack at once, and I really think it has affected their performance. So having one truck to focus on, I think is really going to help them in a pretty massive and a major way. I'm really happy to see that they're making this move. I think this is the right call and right decision for their career as Young's Motorsports to focus a lot of their eggs in the Xfinity Series, and I'm very happy to see, and hopefully we can see Mason Massie run well. I think Mason Massie is a good driver. We'll see if Mason Massie can have a solid year with Young's Motorsports in 2024. They're not in a very good position at owners' points, so I think they have to qualify in a lot of races, but I think they should be okay because Mason can sometimes, definitely for sure, get the most out of his equipment. And now we're going to hedge on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about John Hunter Nemechek. As John Nemechek's 2024 NASCAR Xfinity Series schedule has been revealed. He'll run 10 races in 2024. He'll run at Daytona, Atlanta next week. Then he'll run in Las Vegas, then Phoenix, then Circuit of the Americas. Then he'll take a little bit of break and then race at Sonoma, followed by Iowa, then a race in Nashville, and then Chicago, and then Chicago Street Course, and then at Michigan International Raceway. Of course, John Nemechek will be focusing full-time on running in the NASCAR Cup Series for Legacy Motor Club. He'll also be making 10 starts in the Xfinity Series with Joe Gibbs Racing in the number 20 car. When I think of John Nemechek's chances of winning this year in Xfinity, I think his chances are very, very high. He is going to be in probably the top car at Joe Gibbs Racing this upcoming season. Obviously, Eric Almirola, we know he's going to be running around 15 to 16 races in that number 20 car. I would also expect drivers like Bubba Wallace to get a chance and opportunity as well to get behind the wheel of that seat. But I think John Hunter will contend for wins throughout the year. And if you want my early prediction of how many wins John Hunter Nemechek will get behind the wheel of the 20, I think he'll get 2 wins this year. I had him originally winning a track like Texas, but that's not on the schedule anymore. So I look at tracks, for instance, like Atlanta, the last time we ran there. Las Vegas, a track where he's historically been very good at throughout his career. You look at Phoenix, was pretty fast there last time. You look at tracks like Nashville. You look at Michigan, the last time he ran there. I think John Hunter will be pretty competitive in the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2024, and I think he will have a very solid year. I'm excited to see him get the chance and opportunity once again, and I'm looking forward to him getting to run in the NASCAR Xfinity Series again in 2024. We'll know the rest schedule for the 20 cars soon. Eric Almirola's first race, I believe, is going to be at Richmond, which he might be the front runner to win at Richmond, to be honest, but I'm excited to see, though, John Nemechek will be getting back behind the wheel of the NASCAR Xfinity Series this year. I think he definitely will 100% for sure be able to get the best out of it going into this respective season. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Legacy Motor Club. As it was shockingly announced earlier today that Legacy Motor Club will be entering the Extreme E Series in 2024. Jimmy Johnson, of course, a co-owner of Legacy Motor Club, is going to run a majority of races with the Extreme E Series in 2024. And Travis Pastrana and Gray Ledbetter will be co-drivers for the opening event in 2024. First of all, no one had this coming. I think it's absolutely huge to see Legacy Motor Club make moves like this. They've had a lot of major moves this offseason. They've hired Corey Hamm as a reserve driver, also for 2311 Racing. We know that, of course, Corey Hamm will be working with Kurt Busch this year, maybe even Carl Edwards at some point. But also we know that he's going to be a reserve driver for Legacy. They've hired Trevor Bayne and Matt Kenseth this offseason and have made a lot of investment that's going to Toyota. And now they're going to be entering the Extreme E Series and expanding into that. And you think about the hires they just made. Gray Ledbetter, really, really good in Extreme E, and Travis Pastrana, one of the greatest off-road and extreme drivers in the history of motorsports. I think this is absolutely a huge move. Obviously, next year in 2025, there's going to be some major changes, I think, with hydrogen coming into play for 2025. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's going to be called the Hydrogen Series, is what I think they're going to be calling it. But to see that Legacy Motor Club is continuing to make moves and moving into things like the Extreme East Series, I think is phenomenal and absolutely incredible. And I wish them all the best and a lot of success. And it's good to see that Travis Pastrana is kind of evolving away with the NASCAR team again, because Travis Pastrana, of course, did make his debut in the Daytona 500 last year, of course, in the NASCAR Cup Series. But I think it is really cool to see, again, having a team like Legacy Motorcom, where we're seeing more of these teams expanding to different motorsports. You, of course, got Trackhouse expanding to MotoGP, and of course expanded to Trans Am in the last couple of years. You've got RFK that's looking to expand to IMSA in the not-so-distant future. And you've got 2311 Racing working their way into like IMSA as well. So I think it's pretty awesome, and I'm glad to see the Legacy Motor Club is expanding their motorsports portfolio and joining the Extreme East Series in 2024. I think they'll have a lot of success, and they'll probably be really competitive with teams like Chip Ganassi not showing up this respective season. And now we're going to hedge on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the charter agreement. Now, it was reported by Adam Stern earlier tonight that, according to him, members want a fair share of the NASCAR revenue. They are not as big of a TV deal as they originally thought, a lucrative of the TV deal as they originally thought, and they're wanting to know a lot of rights when it comes to the licensing agreement. Now we kind of a little bit know what's going on with the charter agreement, which is not a shock and surprise. We already knew coming into this charter deal, because the charter deal, obviously, the negotiation table has stopped negotiating. They wanted to have it done by the end of January, so this didn't go into the season. But unfortunately, that did not happen. It was not the case. So now we're going to be months and months away from an agreement being done. And I think the biggest problem is that we don't even know exactly what the numbers exactly are. We're hearing that the teams want to go from 35 to 42% is what NASCAR's offering. And then the other deals, like they have about 39%, and the teams want to go up to 49%. When you look at the TV deal, every single year, it's $1.1 billion. The teams are going to get a lot more money, but it's not as much money as people realize. You have to calculate inflation into it. And when you look at the inflation numbers, yeah, I can understand why the teams are wanting a little bit more of the money. The other key thing is that the teams are wanting the charter system to become permanent, especially with how much teams have now spent on charters. Remember, Live Fast Motorsports sold their charter to Spire Motorsports for a lucrative $40 million. And we're hearing that number is getting even now into the $50 million range. So that is absolutely why they are pushing for more money in this TV deal. But again, at the same time, they also want to have more rights when it comes to knowing how much they're making on a week-by-week basis. NASCAR's never always been the greatest at that. I really hope they get this charter agreement figured out here really, really soon, because if they don't figure this deal out soon, things could get ugly. Do I think a deal will get approved by the end of this year? Absolutely, because remember, a TV deal or a charter deal does not have to be negotiated, or media deal doesn't have to be done until the end of this year. In fact, I don't think it has to be done till the Daytona 500 next year. And I do believe they are going to get this charter agreement done before the end of the year, probably even before the Olympic break is my guess. But I believe they want to have this deal done as soon as possible, because if they don't get this deal done, it could get really ugly very fast and very quickly. So for their sake, they need to get this deal done. I really hope NASCAR and the teams can come to agreement and come to their senses and work together to get a TV deal done, because if not, I think things are not going to go very well for NASCAR into the future, and I don't think anybody wants that, in my opinion. And now we're going to hedge on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Zoof. Now, Adam Stern reported this from Zoof.com. The top 10 people follow the accounts on Instagram. According to Adam Stern and Zoof, in first place, you have Tony Breidinger, who has around 2 million followers. In second place, you have Haley Deegan, who I think has 1.3 or 1.4 million followers. Then, according to this, you have Bubba Wallace, who has around 500,000 followers. Then you have Chase Elliott, who's in 4th position. Kyle Busch is 5th. Kyle Larson is 6th. Joe Logano 7th. Ryan Blaney's 8th. Austin Dillon's 9th. And John Hunter Nemechek is 10th. Now, this is not completely accurate. I think Denny Hamlin might have more followers than Austin Dillon and John Hunter. And Frankie Muniz is now technically a NASCAR driver. And if we're looking at this, he would land in 3rd position behind Haley Deegan. But what's really concerning is the fact that the top 3 drivers technically on this list, or the top 2 on this list, have never made a NASCAR Cup Series start. That could change this year if Haley Deegan does make her debut. Again, you look at the marketing side of things. Tony Breidinger and Haley Deegan know how to market themselves in a really big way. That's why they've both been able to pick up massive and major sponsors. Monster Energy is still with Hailie Deegan. Tony Breininger just picked up Celsius. She's been working with Victoria's Secret. You, of course, also have Raising Cane's working with Tony Breininger. Meanwhile, like I mentioned with Bubba Wallace, he has about $500,000. A lot of people know him, but his numbers are not as big as others. And I believe that these drivers need to be recognized a lot more. And I think it's up to NASCAR to promote their drivers as well and let the drivers promote. And also for the team's sake as well, they do need to let these drivers promote because no disrespect to Tony Breininger and Hailie Deegan, they're not absolutely amazing race car drivers. They're good, but not absolutely amazing compared to these drivers. It doesn't shock me that Bubba Wallace is up there in third position, as also doesn't shock me that Kyle Busch and Chase Elliott in the top 5. What shocked me was seeing Austin Dillon, though, and John Hunter Nemechek inside the top 10. That being said, we need to see more promotion from these drivers, and we need to see more from these teams to really grow the sport in a big way. I really hope it ends up happening because there's got to be a change for this top 10 going into the future if the sport is going to survive long term. You can't just have 2 people over 1 million followers. You got to have more than that, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Stewart Haas Racing. Now, Bob Parks put out an article from Fox Sports talking about the top 24 storylines going into the 2024 season. And one of the big talking points that he talked about was Stewart Haas Racing and the future of this team past 2024. There are a lot of questions, of course, surrounding Stewart Haas Racing. This is the last year of the current deal that they have with Ford. They've had a deal with Ford, I believe, since 2019 or 2020, which actually technically started in 2017. But they had a renegotiation of that deal in 2020 or 2021. And the key thing is that they want to try to get this renewal done, because if they don't get the renewal done, they will not be a key partner team. And let's not make it a secret here. I don't think Tony Stewart is that happy with Ford. Obviously, Ford denied Kyle Busch getting an opportunity to go to Stewart Haas Racing and also denied an opportunity for Kyle Larson to go to Stewart Haas Racing. There's also been rumblings and rumors from people saying that maybe we could see Stewart Haas Racing go back to Chevy and work with Junior Motorsports, which is an unfounded and unconfirmed rumor. But could we see a team like Stewart Haas Racing switch manufacturers? That could be a possibility. But another thing to watch for is, could a team like Stewart Haas Racing downsize their program to be better? They have lost a lot of funding and a lot of sponsorship. We have talked about this on this channel. We have seen sponsors like Busch, which of course gone over the work of Ross Chastain. Smithfield, no longer NASCAR, I believe. I don't think they're going with Eric Almirola over to Xfinity this year. They lost Go Bowling. And they also lost some other big sponsorship this year as well, like Gear Wrench, which is going to Legacy Motor Club. They are keeping Mobile One, but Mobile One is not staying for as many races. And when you have sponsorship leaving, that's not a good thing for your team. I really hope they can get this worked out and figured out, because Stewart Haas Racing just a few years ago, they were one of the top teams in the NASCAR Cup Series. And now they're a team that has lost a lot of that performance, and it's extremely disappointing to watch as a fan of this sport. I really hope they can figure it out and things can get worked out for Stewart Haas Racing, because if they can get worked out, I think SHR can become good again. I do expect that SHR will have some struggles this year, unfortunately, and they need to perform. I think that all 4 drivers will stick around, because I don't think the drivers are the problem at Stewart Haas Racing. I think all 4 drivers currently driving, Josh Berry, Noah Gragson, Chase Briscoe, Ryan Preece, all are very talented. Chase Briscoe won 9 Xfinity Series races with SHR in 2020 and made it to the round of 8 in 2022. Noah Gragson won 8 Xfinity races with Junior Motorsports in 2022. You cannot tell me that these guys are bad drivers. All 4 are good drivers. They have a lot of talent and potential. They just have to get things figured out, because they could switch manufacturers. That certainly is something to watch for going into this year. We'll see how things play out for Stewart Haas Racing throughout the 2024 season and see if things do get figured out for them in the long-term future, because I do believe they want to get it figured out so they can be competitive once again like they were a few years ago. Tony's been pushing them, and they could make some pretty big executive changes if things do not improve and get better. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Matt Benedetto and Brett Moffitt. Now, we've talked about Matt Benedetto and Brett Moffitt quite a bit on this channel over the course of the last few months. The reason we've talked about both these guys is because both of these drivers do not have rides going into this weekend at Daytona, and they do not have any rides for this season currently at the moment. Last year, Matt Benedetto drove for Atgoer Racing full-time, actually got the team to the playoffs, but unfortunately, after announcing early that he was going to be leaving to explore different opportunities, he still does not have a ride currently at the moment. Brett Moffitt, we kind of knew he was not going to be back at AIM Racing. Haley Deegan, of course, was taking over Brett Moffitt's seat going into the year, and AIM Racing is not running 2 full-time entries. It could run a part-time entry, and that is certainly possibly somewhere where Brett Moffitt can go this year. Let's first go back to Matt Benedetto. Matt Benedetto, we all knew had a chance of maybe going to AM Racing. Then Bob Pockerson denied that rumbling. And then, of course, we found out through Chris Rice over the last couple weeks that Matt Benedetto had a deal with College Racing for the season. But due to the sponsorship falling through, Matt Benedetto did not get to end up driving for any team this year. He's still working on an opportunity, and Chris Rice said that there's apparently still talking, having some negotiations about driving with the team this year, but it's unclear if it will end up happening. It is a shame for Matt Benedetto because Matt Benedetto, in my opinion, deserves to be in the NASCAR Cup Series this year because he was going to get some Cup opportunities with College Racing and even Xfinity opportunities. And now, as of right now, he doesn't have those opportunities. And I find it very unfortunate because I think he would be very, very competitive if he was to get an opportunity with a team like College Racing. And then going back to Brett Moffitt, it's more disappointing for Brett Moffitt because, in my opinion, I think he is better than Matt Benedetto, and Brett Moffitt deserves to be in the series. But very similar to Matt Benedetto, you got to have sponsorship and funding. And from what people said, he's kind of hard to work with when it comes to sponsorship. But I believe that Brett Moffitt should be racing in NASCAR right now. He won a truck race last year with Front Row. He should be driving in trucks, in my opinion. If he was driving in trucks, he would be a championship threatened contender and could get a second championship. Instead, he's currently sitting on the sidelines. Both these guys deserve to be racing going into the year, and unfortunately they're not. But again, it all comes down to having the funding and having the sponsorship. And if you have that, you're going to have seats. That's why drivers like Haley Deegan get these rides. That's why Tony Breidinger gets to race. That's why other drivers like Connor Mosak get chance opportunities. They get opportunities because they bring sponsorship and funding to the table. Even if I don't entirely agree with it, even though I think some of these guys are talented and gals are talented, I think that it's a shame that drivers like Matt Benedetto and Brett Moffitt are not racing this season currently at the moment, and I find it unfortunate. Now, Matt Benedetto could go to a team we'll talk about here in just a second, but it's unfounded and confirmed at this point. Again, very disappointing news to see both these guys are not racing this year at the moment. I think they both could have a chance of running with any organization by the end of the year, but again, it's unclear at this point if both these drivers will even be racing this year in 2024. And again, I just find it very unfortunate and disappointing to see that both of them do not have rides currently at the moment for 2024. I really hope that changes for both drivers because they're good and they deserve to be racing in NASCAR in 2024. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the first of 2 major stories in today's episode as we're talking about Shane Van Gisbergen. Now, we've talked about Shane Van Gisbergen quite a bit on this channel because remember, SVG is going to be running full-time in NASCAR this season. But a big reason why we're talking about Shane Van Gisbergen today is because he has a new sponsor for 2024. No, as of now, it is not Red Bull. It is a sponsor called Quad Lock. Quad Lock is apparently a pretty big company in Australia, a pretty local company where Shane Van Gisbergen is from, and they're going to be sponsoring SVG for a lot of races this year, and they'll be sponsoring at Portland in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, and they might even be doing some primary sponsors with SVG in the Cup Series as well. This is absolutely huge because we're wondering what sponsors we're going to be working with Shane Van Gisbergen. We know that WeatherTech will be sponsoring SVG for quite a few races this year, and I've already talked about this at the moment, but there is a potential possibility that Red Bull is going to be working with Shane Van Gisbergen, maybe as a primary, considering Red Bull has had a big partnership with Shane Van Gisbergen over the course of the last few years and seasons. There's a lot of hype for Shane Van Gisbergen going into this season, and a lot of people are expecting him to do extremely good, especially in the select road course races. And I think he'll be very competitive on the road courses in 2024. The big question is going to be, what about how he does on the ovals? Because I think the goal for 2024 is to do really good on the ovals by the end of the year. I expect Shane Van Gisbergen at the start of the year to kind of struggle on the ovals. I think he's going to run decent, but not absolutely amazing. But by the end of the year, I think he'll be very, very competitive and will be competing for wins on ovals by the end of this season, because I think that Shane Van Gisbergen is going to do really, really good with Kaulig Racing. I think he's going to be competitive at super speedways because we know that Kaulig Racing has a very solid, and in my opinion, a really, really strong super speedway program and a background, which I think could lead to SVG running really solid and good on those super speedways. But then the big question is, how does he do on the ovals? That will be a major determination as we go through this season. But again, seeing Shane Van Gisbergen bring a new sponsor up to the plate and bringing it into the NASCAR Xfinity Series this year, I think is really, really awesome and amazing to see. And seeing a company like Quadlock come in to work with SVG is great. A company from Australia. I think I've used some of their stuff, as a matter of fact. I think they've got some of their Quadlock stuff that is currently here in the United States. So to see a company like them join a sport is phenomenal, incredible. And now we just wait to see if a company like Red Bull ends up joining the sport as well, because I think Red Bull coming back would be huge, because Red Bull has not been a major sponsor in NASCAR for nearly a decade and a half since Red Bull Racing left NASCAR at the end of 2011. I really hope they do come back, but again, it's phenomenal, and I'm very happy nonetheless to see that Shane Van Gisbergen is bringing some new sponsorship to the table, and we'll see if that sponsorship can lead to success, especially at Portland, a racetrack where Shane Van Gisbergen has been very, very fast, very quick, and very competitive, especially on road course style tracks like Portland Raceway, which he's had a lot of experience from supercars. And now we'll go ahead, Javon, to the final major story of today's episode, as we're talking about NY Racing. Now, earlier this evening, we saw the Daytona 500 interests officially get revealed. We thought initially there were only going to be 41 cars that were going to be entering the Daytona 500. But according to the entry list, there is a 42nd team that is going to be showing up at this year's Daytona 500. That team is NY Racing. NY Racing has not raced in NASCAR in 2 seasons, and they had Greg Biffle driving behind the wheel of that number 44 car, and they do have sponsorship, according to reports, from 100 Coconut Water. I think it's Coconut 100 Water or 100 Coconut Water. You're not exactly sure. Initially, when this came out, a lot of people were speculating it was going to be Greg Biffle getting behind the wheel of this seat, and here is why. If you take a look at the John Cohan hauler, it showed Greg Biffle being behind the wheel. But unfortunately, that is not the case. Greg Biffle released a statement earlier this evening basically saying that he had actually been planning to run this year's Daytona 500. But basically he said he saw all the reports coming out and was basically saying, no, I'm not running the Daytona 500 this year. And I'm not running in NASCAR again until we see them get paid. Quintessentially, Greg Biffle has still not been paid from John Cohan in NY Racing, which is why he is not showing up to the Daytona 500 this year. It is a really big shame, and it's really unfortunate to see. NY Racing's had a pretty shady past, and they've been a team that's shown up very sporadically. It's good to see if they are going to be showing up this year, likely at the Daytona 500, which will get to some drivers who could get behind the wheel of that seat. But again, pay Greg Biffle so he can run, because Greg Biffle, while yes, he wasn't like the greatest driver ever, he was still an amazing driver in the NASCAR Cup Series. Got nearly 20 wins in his career. A lot of this happening past the age of 35, by the way, and nearly won a couple championships in like 2005, 2008, and 2012 as well. And I think Greg Biffle deserves to be racing once again. He won a truck race at the age of 50 years old, by the way, with KBM 5 years ago, and was pretty solid with GMS in 2020. And Greg has been wanting to come back and race in the sport. We all know this. It would have been cool to see him run the Daytona 500, but it was going to be tough anyways for him to compete for the overall win, because NY Racing is one of those teams that a lot of people are looking at to go home this year, because NY Racing, we know they've not been fast overall. They've made the Daytona 500 2022 with Greg Biffle, but they just haven't been a team that's been really quick and very, very competitive, and they've struggled in every other race they've ran. In fact, they've not earned a lot of points. But now with Greg Biffle likely not getting behind the wheel, who could be a candidate to drive the seat? Could a driver like Matt Benedetto, who doesn't have anything signed at the moment, could he go there? Probably not at this point. Maybe like Carl Edwards? No, probably not at this point, even though Carl Edwards was spotted at Daytona. I don't think he's going to run the Daytona 500. I've seen some people suggesting Connor Daly, and I don't think Connor Daly is going to be the driver. If I was a betting man, I would think maybe J.J. Yeley. J.J. Yeley, I think, has driven for NY Racing in the past, back in 2018. And JJ Yeley has ran some super speedway races in the last couple of years. And I think JJ has been a pretty serviceable and a good driver. So like I said, if I was a betting man right now, I think it would be JJ Yeley. Again, there still is a chance NY Racing could withdraw from the event. And if they do end up withdrawing officially, they will be only one car going home. And if I was an early betting man, I would probably go with the 78 car. But again, I find it really disappointing and really unfortunate that Greg Biffle isn't going to run the Daytona 500. Even though, yes, Greg Biffle is 54 years old and will be the oldest driver in the Cup Series field if he was to make it, I still think Greg Biffle being back in the sport would have been incredible. And it's just a shame to see that a team like NY Racing is being a little bit greedy here, and they're not paying Greg Biffle right now to run the 500. He should be getting paid because he deserves to be racing in this sport, and it's a shame that a team like NY Racing, who's had a very troubled past as an organization, continues to make really bad business moves. Even though I think they will be in the Daytona 500, they've been in the rumblings for the last few months. We know there was a lot of talk about them. It is just a shame to see that NY Racing is making the moves they're making, and it's just a disappointing move overall for that organization. I feel terrible for Greg Biffle. I feel bad for the people involved. I know a lot of people are really excited to see Greg get the chance to come back, but right now Greg Biffle is not running the Daytona 500, and it's really unfortunate, and it sucks to see overall. So, that is going to be it for today's NASCAR news and motorsports news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Link description below that, and comment below your thoughts below on today's episode. What do you think about Greg Biffle? Do you think he should be running with this team? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about all the stories we've talked about today on the channel? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Tomorrow on the channel, I'm going to have 3 race pick videos dropping on the channel for all the Daytona races, along with Daytona 500 qualifying reactions. Then on Thursday, there'll probably be a NASCAR news video on the channel potentially, along with the reaction to the duels. Friday, probably another NASCAR news video, along with the course, maybe starting with a great video, also with the Truck Series race review. Saturday, you're going to have the Xfinity Series race review, and then Sunday, if the weather can cooperate, we'll have the Daytona 500 race review. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.